So the Ukrainians were involved in another assassination, and I want to talk about what happened, and then I want to talk about, is this a legitimate thing to go after, or is it something that the Russians can stop, and we'll go on from there. This is a car that was bombed. The guy who was killed is a guy named Mikhail Filippenko. Sorry, I was confusing Oleg Tarasov, who was just a few weeks ago. Okay, Mikhail Filippenko is a member of the Regional Assembly in the Russian-occupied Luhansk region of the eastern Ukraine. He was killed in a car bombing. Ukraine's main Directorate of Intelligence claimed responsibility for what he called the liquidation of a war criminal. Okay, was he a war criminal? And that's what we have to unpack to see the legitimacy of what just happened. Okay, Filippenko was a former head of the Moscow-backed separatist groups in Luhansk, so he already was treasonous against his own country. I get it. Oh, but they're just separatists. Well, they're taking up arms against their own countrymen, so that's part of this. He reportedly survived another assassination attempt in February 21st of last year. Now, I'd be very nervous if I was a Ukrainian in a Russian-backed authority kind of position, because much of the population around you is going to hate you and want to kill you. And you can't really tell who's on which side of this. And so that's got to be a little nerve-wracking. Russian lawmakers in mid-February also called on Putin to recognize separatist-controlled parts of Ukraine's eastern regions of Luhansk and Donetsk as independent states, ratified corresponding documents after Putin signed them. So they were part of the process of actually helping Putin break these pieces of Ukraine away from Ukraine and into Russia legally, even though it's completely illegal. But I mean, they were part of this entire process. So is he a legitimate target? Absolutely. But if you need more proof, I'll show you. Before 2010, Filippenko was a lawmaker in Luhansk's Lenin district. So he was a Ukrainian lawmaker before he chose to side on the separatist side and then side with Russia. After Russia unilaterally declared its annexation of Ukraine's Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia regions in September 2022, Filippenko became the leader of Russia's ultranationalist Liberal Democratic Party. Okay, a little bit more here. We have Ukraine says that it was behind the car bombing of the Russian proxy politician in the Moscow Times. So it's not like they're hiding from it. They're admitting it. Here is official Defense Intelligence of Ukraine's tweet. Here's Defense Intelligence Agency of Ukraine. And yeah, they're taking responsibility of it as a result of the car explosion. If you're wondering if they actually did it, they talked to Politico and said, yeah, we did it. I mean, it's pretty clear. Yeah, it was our operation, and Andrei Chernak, representative of Ukraine's Military Intelligence Directorate, told Politico, he was. Now, if you want to understand why, or if you're sympathetic toward the guy, or you're thinking, they shouldn't go after these politicians. Politicians aren't the same as military. Yeah, they're not, except that they kind of sometimes are. Okay, he was involved in the organization of torture camps in the occupied territories. Does that change your mind any? Okay, of the Luhansk region, where prisoners of war and civilian hostages were subject, not just prisoners of war, that's bad enough, but civilians were subject to inhumane torture. Filippenko himself personally brutally tortured people. Okay, so if you're still on the side of like, he's a civilian, he's not a combatant. No, he's placed himself squarely in the crosshairs. Now, the GRU also said all war criminals will be punished, and I think that Ukraine is taking a very Israeli kind of stance, where they're saying, no, we're going after everybody. They were just in Sudan. I was about to make a video about the special forces in Sudan, and then I came across this assassination, and I thought, wait, this has to take priority. Okay. Pro-Moscow Ukrainian politician shot in apparent assassination attempt. This was just a few weeks ago. Oleg Tarasov. Now remember him? He was down in Crimea. So this was in Luhansk. This previous one. This guy's in Luhansk, and Oleg Tarasov is in Crimea. He was in Yalta. He was in his own home. He was shot twice. And as far as I know, he's still alive. I couldn't find anything confirming or denying that nothing confirming his death or his condition. But yeah, this was just 2 weeks ago. So the GUR is going to keep doing this. Now let's look again at this. SBU confirms the assassination attempt of traitor lined up by Putin to lead the post. So this one 2 weeks ago could have been the guy that, if everything went well for Russia in that 3-day, 3-week invasion, the special military operation, could have replaced Zelensky, become a puppet governor. The other guy, the one that we were talking about today, he was actually torturing people. So I have very little sympathy for this. But, oppressed people tend to push back against their oppressors. Here's what's happening in Mariupol, and this is a few weeks old now. This is October, well, a month old almost, October 16th. Partisan Mariupol poisoning operations are so successful because Russians are idiots. So they're actually working in Mariupol at actively trying to poison military that are there. Ukrainian partisans have killed more than 40 Russian soldiers in Mariupol in recent months, a significant majority of them by poisoning. It has been claimed. Is this the activity of partisans? It became possible because of new rotation of personnel and because the orcs, that's a derogatory term for Russians, are idiots. Now, you really don't want to say, my enemies are idiots and that's why I have an advantage, but they aren't really catching on to what's happening to them. Okay. In August, 2 Russian officers were killed and 15 others hospitalized in a mass poisoning carried out by Ukrainian partisans, which targeted Russian occupation troops as they celebrated Navy Day in Mariupol. They were poisoning either food or alcohol, and it was working to great effect. Again, 40 or more have been targeted this way. In total, over the summer and 2 months of autumn, the Mariupol resistance eliminated more than 40 occupiers in various ways. So if you're going to occupy a country, you have to have a certain number of soldiers to be able to make sure that you have a high enough ratio. Army plans call for an occupation force, this is after World War II, of some 400,000 in the American zone for the first 18 months, or 1 U.S. soldier for every 40 Germans. A study by military analyst James Quinlan concluded that the bare minimum ratio to provide security for the inhabitants of an occupied territory, let alone deal with an active insurgency, is 1 to 50. And if you have some kind of deal where they're even more hostile, like what's going on in Mariupol, you'd probably want higher numbers than that. They're going to keep resisting, and Ukraine's going to fight with what it has. Hey, a little while back, I showed you a comment on Twitter that somebody was talking about, like, look, you fight with what you have. And with Russia, they fight with the resource that they have is people. And that's why they send meat wave attacks. Ukraine doesn't do this. So they're doing these targeted attacks in order to assassinate this guy or that guy, or blow up this ship or whatever else. But they're being very, very specific, where Russia tends to be much more indiscriminate because they have different goals. Okay, that's the update for today. Tell me what you think about this. I'm not sure that everybody's going to agree that this is a legitimate target, but from what I can see, it seems like somebody who is a traitor to your country, so you're broken treason laws, and then is torturing civilians, is a pretty fair target. I mean, if you just set aside that you're in a war and you just think about normal legislative process, just the torturing of another human being would get you thrown in jail to begin with. So I wouldn't let the guy off the hook. And I recognize that there could be a slippery slope in assassinations. The Russians can try to do this to Ukrainians as well, as what we saw yesterday or the day before with what we thought was a birthday gift that exploded. And so it could be that it could go both ways. But I think this is the way that the Ukrainians are going to prosecute the war as we move forward. Okay, thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, the coffees, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.